When we talk about the impact of cryptography on security investigations, there's really two aspects that we need to look at from a security analyst perspective. The first aspect is that attacks can be against our encryption algorithms. So attackers can sit there and pick apart the algorithm and try to figure out a means to crack it, to obtain the keys, to be able to take your encrypted data that has been captured by some other means and be able to read it. That's one aspect of cryptography and how it affects our investigations. We need to understand that that is a possibility. The other aspect is that cryptography is often used to hide. We can hide things in plain sight simply by encrypting them. So let's take a look at a little bit more detail of each area here. So let's start out with attacking the algorithm. So the idea behind attacking the encryption algorithms is that they, meaning an attacker, is looking for a weakness in the algorithm itself. Now, over the years, there have been many encryption algorithms that have been developed. We know this. So some of them are less secure than others. That's why some diligence on our part in making use of the more secure encryption algorithms is prudent. Here's an example of one attack against the algorithm that you may already be familiar with. It's the OpenSSL Heartbleed vulnerability. This was recorded in CVE 2014-0160. Now this actually happened in 2014, and there were many servers that were running the OpenSSL that were vulnerable to this. Now, what was the big deal? Well, what this did is it leveraged the TLS heartbeat extension. Now, TLS is Transport Layer Security. And Transport Layer Security is really kind of the evolution of SSL, right? So you think about your SSL connections to a server, like your bank, like your ASA for your clientless SSL VPN, things along those lines. So it would leverage the heartbeat extension in the protocol and the way that the server would validate your heartbeat request and provide a response. And what would happen is, by using this uniquely crafted attack, an attacker could gain access to private data that was stored in memory on the server. They could get the server to provide them with that data. So that's just one example of attacking the algorithm. The other area that we need to be aware of is using cryptography to hide, as we mentioned in the introduction. And oftentimes what we see is that it's used to hide command and control traffic. So let's give you an example of that. Okay, so here we have a very simple network, and on our network here, this diagram, we have this server that is a command and control server for a botnet. And then we have another machine that comes into the network that has been infected with malware. Now this machine that's been infected with malware will attempt to connect to that command and control server. And if it does this using an encrypted session, then there's the potential that that firewall can't see the encrypted data. And then we have a problem. So again, this is how cryptography can be used to hide what's happening. And obviously we need to be aware of that as a security analyst. Now, one of the fundamentals that you'll need to understand as a security analyst is how to verify a certificate and make sure that it's valid or not. Let's take a look at an example of a valid certificate. Here we are on the Cisco website, and as you can see, we've navigated to the HTTPS site, the secured site. And in our browser, we're going to click on the security report, the lock that's here, and we can click on View Certificates, and this will open that certificate up for us. And the way that we can tell that this is a valid certificate is that it was issued to Cisco.com, but it was issued by this Verizon Akamai secure server, so it was issued from a trusted third party. Now let's take a look at an example of a certificate that is not trusted. And this simply gives us an example of a certificate for a website, 192.168.100.1. And we are told by our web browser, and certain browsers will do this, that it is not trusted. We can't verify the identity. When we look at the certificate details, this is what's called a self-signed certificate. Now, this certificate was not signed by a trusted third party. So therefore, we would, under normal circumstances, consider this to be an untrusted certificate. Now, oftentimes, our network devices are going to present a self-signed certificate to us in our networks while we're going through the initial bootstrapping and the setup process. However, it is important to understand that under normal circumstances, browsing to websites, if they present us with a self-signed certificate, we would consider that to be untrusted. Again, this is just another aspect that we need to understand at a basic level, whether a certificate is valid and trusted or not.